Next to leave was Geoffrey Perkins, followed by Rob Grant and Doug Naylor. In 1988, they launched Red Dwarf onto BBC Two, which co-starred spitting image voice Chris Barry.
I don't know, what is the point? Everything always goes wrong for me. I'm probably the only person in the world to buy a topic bar without a single hazelnut in it.
Rory Bremner got the chance to extend his range of voices on The Rory Bremner Show in 1988. And, in 1989, Ian Hislop and Nick Newman decided enough was enough. The new team brought in to replace the old boys included producer Bill Dare, writers John O'Farrell, Pete Sinclair and Steve Punt, and two new voices, Steve Coogan and Alistair McGowan.
I took over from Chris Barry. So I can remember doing David Coleman in a few sketches, and it had to be, Chris Barry as David Coleman, which it would have been anyway, because it was very, very funny.
Characters, that's Mary, Joseph, and the one and only Jesus Christ, who turned the lights out? What the hell's going on in here? This place is like a bloody circus. What's he doing?
But I made him more and more slurred over the years, which is what happened to David, really, and a bit more...
Oh, well, he wasn't expecting that, and neither was I, and, well, this is one battle the human is never going to win.
The new Spitting Image team barely had time to take their seats when they were faced with a dramatic new twist in the Conservative Party's plot.
Just before Maggie faced a vote for her leadership, there was a sketch I wrote, and it just featured her walking through an empty House of Commons, feeling a little bit nostalgic and lonely, and sort of hearing the echoes of her former speeches.
This state is not for turning. We shall go on and on.
The researcher at Spitting Image at the time had a friend who worked for a couple of Tory MPs, and we found out that these guys were so moved by this sketch, these Tories, that they actually voted for Maggie in the leadership election when they'd been planning to abstain, and that was enough votes to tip it over to a second ballot. So for all this time, we've been trying to write sketches to get people to vote against Maggie, and the only definite success we had was to get people to vote for her.
Despite O'Farrell's heroic efforts, Maggie did not survive.
Following the sad news concerning the Prime Minister, instead of the published programme, as a mark of respect, there will now be a piece of music.
1, 2, 3, 4. Happy days are here again. The skies above are clear again. We'll sing a song of cheer again. Happy days are here again.
I remember I was driving to work on a Thursday when Thatcher resigned, and sort of part of me was going, yeah, and part of me was going, well, what do we do now? Because if Major gets in, we are stuffed, because he was such a boring bloke.
We sat around and talked endlessly about how we could portray Major.
As your new and excitingly different Prime Minister, I'd just like to say, I am my own man. I am my own man. I am my
oh dear,
own man.
He keeps jamming.
I think, funnily enough, the starting point was, in a way, the answer, which was we all thought, oh, God, how do you write for this grey man? He has no character, no charisma, he's just grey.
Not eating your peas, dear?
Oh, no. I'm saving them to last.
Oh.
And it just struck a chord with everyone that he was eating peas with Norma, just peas. It was the most boring vegetable we could think of.
All right, dear.
In fact, the writers found John Major so dull that they invented something completely preposterous and incredible to spice up his life.
You seem a little...
Upset? No, why should I be? Everything's just fine.
Oh, good.
Especially now that Virginia's in the cabinet.
The Affair with Virginia Bottomley, that was another series that ran over several weeks.
There is an example of how sometimes life can out-satire satire.
It wasn't because we thought that he was having it off with any senior Conservative women.
I don't think even, a room full of the most hardened comedy writers would have dreamed that Major and Edwina would be the couple.
More peas, John? No, it's all right. I already had a curry earlier.
Well, Ginny's a very...
Ginny?
What I meant was Virginia, Mrs. Bottomley's very popular with the voters.
I'm sure she is.
I often wonder if John Major sat at home with Norma thinking, thank God they said Ginny. Thank God they picked Ginny. And in fact, he might have been delighted because he might have that perfect cover. She'd been watching Ginny like a hawk. Meanwhile, him and Edwina are at it like knives in the office, you know.
1992, another election year, another Labour defeat. Bill Dare couldn't face the prospect of repeating the same old Tory jokes, so he decided to take Spitting Image in a different direction.
I think I probably slightly reduced the amount of politics. I really wanted the show to be a popular show and for it to be funny above all else.
Why can't the world be like hello? Why aren't people nice to one another?
When it started, it was much more about satire and about a take on the world. I think as the show progressed, and certainly when I joined it and towards its latter years, people didn't really want that so much, and the sketches that were talked about weren't the ones about Gaddafi and Reagan, who obviously had moved on by then, but the equivalent. The ones that people talked about were the silly knockabout, Punch and Judy, almost showbizy ones with good gags and a surreal element to them, really.
The spirit of Spitting Image was also being recycled across the TV schedules. In 1990, Ian Hislop was helping recreate the show's earlier, more satirical days on BBC Two's Have I Got News for You? A series which could have been presented by John Lloyd, who fronted the pilot, while Angus Deaton was appearing in KYTV, a satire on cheap television, co-starring former Puppet Supremo Geoffrey Perkins.
How are the pictures transmitted from the studio into thousands of homes?
Well, I think you put your finger on it there when you said alpha waves, because that's exactly how they're transmitted. You see, these alpha waves...
Sorry, I didn't say alpha waves.
Didn't you?
No.
Oh, maybe it was me then that said alpha waves. Oh, there you are, so it was. Anyway...
Harry Enfield stepped out of the voiceover booth and in front of the cameras for his television programme in 1990. Among his many characters was a memorable creation by Ian Hislop and Nick Newman.
What's your name again?
Ah, nice but dim T, sir. 73 to 77. Then retake 78 to 84. Great friends with peers, nothing between the ears.
Yeah. We make you wanna!
During the 1980s, Spitting Image had been amongst the most successful and influential programmes on television, getting audiences in excess of 15 million. But by the 1990s, it was down to a quarter of that, and Spitting Image was under threat from programmes that probably wouldn't have existed without it.
Spitting Image was doomed from the moment Have I Got News for You started. Because TV executives look at the telly and they go, hang on, that's just a desk, right? That's a desk, there's 5 people behind it, they're showing some news headlines and they're getting big laughs. Why are we paying a vast team of puppeteers, set makers, writers, latex moulders and caricaturists to make us a comedy show? The one thing I always feel is ironic about Spitting Image is that it used to be made in a studio in a building right in the middle of Docklands, and eventually Spitting Image had to move out and they knocked the whole place down and they built this huge glittering monument to capitalism right on top of where Spitting Image had raged against the establishment, and it always somehow feels to me like it's sort of putting satire in its place.
Tomorrow belongs to me.
Well, we certainly did for Maggie, didn't we?
Yeah. I mean, how long did she last? Ooh. What, just the 11 years and 3 terms? We finished her off.
Well, somebody